The Beholder has 180 average hit points with an AC of 18, which places it comfortably in the average health range of other 13 CR creatures. However, while it does have a decent health pool, it doesn't have any resistances to back it up, meaning that what you see is what you get. The Beholder deals with this lack of resistances by having an innate fly speed, above average stats, all alongside a bunch of deadly ranged attacks that it can use to keep its assailers at bay. Specifically, it has 10 unique eye rays with varying effects, all of which require some form of a saving throw with a DC of 16 depending upon the ray it's used. So let's go over all of the rays, starting with the effect rays and then finishing off with the damaging rays. Up first, we have the Charm Ray. This uses a Wisdom saving throw and causes a creature to become charmed for up to an hour. In case anyone forgot or happens to think charm effects are useless in combat, allow me to remind you that if you become charmed, you cannot attack the creature who has charmed you. So if you fail your save from a Beholder's Charm Ray, you had better hope someone has Dispel Magic prepared or you're going to be charmed for an hour. Next up, we have the Paralyzing Ray. This one uses Constitution saving throws and is one of the scarier rays in the Beholder's arsenal. Not so much because of the ray itself, but because of what it makes possible. If you become paralyzed, you automatically fail all strength and dexterity saving throws, which happen to be the saves for the high damage eye rays that the Beholder has. But the one saving grace of this is that you are allowed to remake your save at the end of your turn. So let's just hope you are able to break out before the Beholder uses something like a Death Ray. Next up, we have the Fear Ray, which fears a creature that fails a Wisdom saving throw. While it is technically one of the least dangerous eye rays that the Beholder has, it does prolong combat, which makes it nothing to scoff at. Although I still would rather be scared than petrified, but hey, that's just me. But the next ray is the Slowing Ray, and this is the most annoying ray in the entire kit. It forces a dexterity saving throw, and any creature that fails pretty much is affected by the slow spell minus the AC penalty. Which means your speed's halved, you can't take reactions, and you can only choose to make an action or a bonus action on your turn, meaning that you are severely restricted on your options during your turn. But the next ray is kind of a fun one, with the Telekinetic Ray. It forces a strength save or you become restrained, and the Beholder can then throw you anywhere within 30 feet. This might not sound super impactful, but consider the possibilities. He might toss you in the air, dealing falling damage, throw you into a wall that happens to have very sharp and jagged rocks, or drop you into a vertical tunnel within his lair. Considering that these tunnels can be incredibly high, this ray can have some pretty deadly implications. Next up, we have the Sleep Ray, which is exactly what it sounds like. You fail a Wisdom save and you fall asleep. Sounds pretty simple, but if you're asleep, then you're unconscious, and if you're unconscious, then you have a phone book-sized list of negative effects alongside the auto-failing of all strength and dexterity saves. And like I mentioned earlier, that is really bad. And finally, we have the last and most dangerous non-damaging ray, which is of course the Petrification Ray. This, just like Sleep Ray, is exactly what it sounds like. If you fail a dex save, then you become petrified. And if that happens, you had better hope someone prepared Greater Restoration, because if not, you're the new trophy in the Big Angry Eyes living room. And for the final three rays, we have the ones that can outright actually damage you. First, we have the Enervation Ray. This forces a Constitution saving throw, dealing 8d8 necrotic damage or half as much on a successful save. That's it, just pure damage. Next up though, we have the Disintegration Ray, which is considerably more deadly. Specifically, we have a dex save dealing 10d8 damage on a failed save, and if a creature drops to 0 hit points as a result of this ray, then they just turn to dust. So if you are anywhere near low hit points, you really don't want to get hit by this ray. And in that same vein, the last ray, the Death Ray, functions the same, only it deals more damage. It uses dex saves and deals 10d10 damage on a failed save, and just outright kills anything that's reduced to 0 hit points because of it. Between its 10 eye rays, the Beholder has 2 that just outright end you, 1 that removes you from combat entirely, and 7 that make fighting a Beholder incredibly terrifying. And let's not forget, on the Beholder's turn, they can fire 3 of these battle areas at any target that it chooses. But alongside those 3 eye rays, the Beholder also gets 3 legendary actions, all of which it can use to shoot more eye rays on the player's turns. So in an entire round, the Beholder gets to fire off 6 eye rays in total, which is pretty darn scary even if they are entirely random. And if you're not convinced yet, a beholder can literally go toe-to-toe with an adult white dragon. And no, I'm not kidding, I literally ran the simulations and made an entire video about it. It's linked in the description below if you want to check it out. Oh yeah, and I also forgot to mention that the beholder has an anti-magic cone from its frontal eye. Because of that, you can forget about staying back and lobbing spells from safety because the likelihood that they'll actually hit is unlikely at best. So between the innate fly speed, the decent pool of hit points, all of its eye rays, and its anti-magic cone, the beholder is one of the most feared creatures in all of D&D 5th edition. But what makes the beholder even more terrifying is its absolutely bananas crazy lore. So let's jump into what's behind the giant stat block. Beholders share a trait which seems commonplace amongst all powerful creatures in D&D, and that would be their extreme belief that they are above all other creatures. This, coupled with their xenophobic nature and their extreme paranoia of any perceived threats, makes the beholder incredibly unpredictable, which is arguably the most dangerous aspect of their personality. They meticulously analyze seemingly unrelated events, fabricating patterns and preparing for countless possibilities, making them truly ready for really any situation. Because of this, beholders meticulously design their lairs to mirror their strategic mindset, anticipating and thwarting any plans potential invaders might devise. The layout is made up of isolated chambers, each accessible by only one or two areas, granting the beholder control of the routes enemies must take in order to reach the Inn of Sanctum, all riddled with traps that make traversal of the lair near impossible for anyone unfamiliar with the layout. The lair's configuration is tailored to the beholder's flight ability, with a lot of vertical or steeply sloped tunnels that prevent larger creatures from traversing and confronting the beholder. Beholders also happen to have minions that have living spaces within their lair, all connected with seeming staircases or ramps accommodating to those creatures that can't fly, meaning that the beholder generally has a good idea of what kind of creatures will be able to confront it. Now, while a beholder's paranoia can very well be excessive, they have a good reason to be at least kind of paranoid because they can quite literally create their very own worst enemy. They are one of the few creatures in all of D&D that have the power to literally warp reality with their mind. The only problem is that this occurs while a beholder sleeps, and if it happens to have a nightmare or an incredibly vivid dream, it's possible for it to manifest it into reality. A beholder can manifest another beholder into existence or warp reality based on its own thoughts. This is generally how beholders or beholderkin are created. They can even physically alter themselves in their dream by adjusting to its warped perception within that dream. For example, a beholder nearing death would likely fear dying and unwittingly transform itself into a death tyrant, which is effectively an undead beholder. Another beholder might dream about a vampire, resulting in the creation of beholderkin known as a death kiss. So considering all of that, it's pretty understandable as to why a beholder is so paranoid. But because of that paranoia, all observations of a beholder lead the witness to kind of come to the conclusion that they're all outright insane. And that's only partially true. Beholders' minds are actually separated into two entirely separate entities, all within one body. Each of these entities thinks and acts independently and even maintains their own names. When the beholder argues with its other entity within the one body, it looks like the beholder is just arguing with itself. In rare cases, it is possible that the two entities within the beholder work together, creating a generally less paranoid demeanor and creating a much more stable or sane beholder. Beholders that experience this are able to suppress their xenophobia and overcome their extreme paranoia and opt to live among creatures within organizations as leaders of these organizations, with some of the most well-known examples being Xanathar, the beholder leader of the Xanathar's Thieves Guild. However, the vast majority of beholders are those which live in the dark recesses of the Underdark, planning and plotting for all possible threats. My favorite way to run a beholder is really just play up their insanity and give them some really crazy paranoid focus. For example, the last beholder I ran had an intense fear of socks, and as my party approached the lair, they saw a sign with a sock on it that had a big X over it. Funnily enough, my party figured it out and took their shoes and socks off entering the lair, which ultimately allowed them to have a conversation with the beholder with no combat. But that's just one silly example from my experience. You can take that or come up with any other crazy idea of your own, but either way, make sure to leave a comment and let me know because I love hearing stories about this stuff. If you want to see more cool monsters for D&D, you can click on the playlist in the corners or the description box below, and make sure to subscribe. I made an older video about the Beholder focused purely on the silly parts of the lore, so that's in the description below as well if you want to check that out. But as always, thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on Friday.